For the last 150 years, West Virginia and Appalachia built the country. We powered the country. We shipped out our coal to help build up California and Massachusetts and New York. The rest of the world is moving on to renewables, and energy has been such a big part of our story and our economy and our narrative for so long that it only made sense to me that we should embrace the next version of energy.
Hi, and welcome to Solar for All, a podcast focused on the intersection of solar and the issues of race, class, justice, and equity. My name is Geoff Greenfield, and I'm your host. And all the show notes and other great resources are at our website on the show page, solarforall.show. That's solarforall.show. With me today is our guest, Dan Conent. Dan is the founder and CEO of Solar Holler and a friend in solar, and we'll be talking quite a bit about the intersection of our industry that we love dearly, as well as these important emerging themes of solar and clean energy and race, class, justice, and equity. Let's just jump right into this. I'm going to go ahead and throw a question at you that you probably get quite often. The name of your company is Solar Holler, and that's a kind of an unusual name. You want to unpack that a little bit and tell us a little bit about your origin story?
Yeah, so we design, install, finance, and take care of systems around West Virginia and Central Appalachia. And I personally grew up in a holler. A holler is Appalachian slang for a mountain valley, like a tight little mountain valley. And people talk about the hollers they grew up in, their home holler. It's kind of a code word where if you are from West Virginia, you know this word. And if you're not, it will mean shouting or something else. But for everyone in West Virginia, it kind of brings back memories of home.
I'm in Appalachian, Ohio, and we've got hollers too. In fact, I lived on a road called Sweat Holler. They spelled it out hollow, but pronounced it holler. So I can identify with that. Yeah. So Solar Holler. So, when we mention solar to people, the states of California might come to mind, Arizona, West Virginia might be kind of low on the list. But I don't think that that's really appropriate. It sounds like there's a lot going on there. But on the other hand, welcome to West Virginia. Used to have a big coal states, coal friendly, powered by coal. Tell us a little bit about coal and solar and your world.
For the last 150 years, West Virginia and Appalachia built the country. We powered the country. We shipped out our coal to help build up California and Massachusetts and New York. And one of my personal reasons for moving back home, I'd been in the solar industry up in Vermont and worked at the U.S. Department of Energy, and ultimately wanted to come back to my hometown, my home holler in West Virginia to kickstart the industry here. And that's because I didn't want to see the state get left behind. The rest of the world is moving on to renewables, and energy has been such a big part of our story and our economy and our narrative for so long that it only made sense to me that we should embrace the next version of energy. So to give a little scope on how big coal has been for West Virginia, back in the 1950s, we had 400,000 people working in the mines out of about 1.8 million people total. 1.8 million people total in the state. And out of those, 400,000 were working directly for the coal mines. So this was just a massive, massive part of the economy. These days, we're down to 14,000. So we've gone from 400 to 14. And across southern West Virginia, you've just got towns emptying out. You've got, like in certain county, like McDowell County, our southernmost county in the state, they've gone from about 100,000 people to 15,000. And now you can have like 4 out of every 5 buildings just abandoned. And so it's really important when we're thinking about what solar should be like and what the energy world should be like over the next 150 years, that we don't just forget this entire stretch of the country that did so much to get us where we are today. Yeah. Up and down the Ohio Valley, we've got steel and aluminum facilities that have, that use the coal and built the bridges, built the cars. But fortunately, there is a direct link between those steel mills and aluminum mills and the solar industry, in that it takes a lot of metal on rooftops to bring these projects to life. So we've actually been able to incorporate portions of our supply chain from Appalachia, Ohio, just a few hours away, and we're looking as much as possible at how to incorporate that. We're even getting our solar panels now from not from West Virginia or Ohio, but from northern Georgia. So we've been able to pull in Appalachian panels into our mix, and yeah, there's just so much here that we can do beyond the installation side to help make sure that we're using the resources we've got to rebuild a more diversified economy in Appalachia.
Most of our listeners are, very into the solar tech for a variety of reasons. Climate probably is the biggest one. A lot of us got into this industry because we're tree huggers or into sustainability, but it's a bigger and bigger part of the conversation is economic development and job creation, and not just jobs, but quality jobs. And I know that that's a big part of your mission and success so far, although it's just scratching the surface. With your customers as well as stakeholders, is that as important as sustainability, or even supersedes sustainability and climate change as part of the hope for solar?
We have so many folks come to us where on the first meeting they'll say, "Don't tell anyone I'm a tree hugger. I'm not." And I'm doing this because I hate the utility, or because I really want to save money, or because I'm a tech head and I love the latest tech. Obviously, there are some enviros mixed in there, but the vast majority of folks are not approaching it from that side and would never want to get caught dead being accused of being an environmentalist.
You guys are in a red state, and I guess trying to be more inclusive for a lot of people means maybe reaching out to people of color to be part of the workforce or customer base. But I guess, we really, as an industry, could be a lot more inclusive in terms of political backgrounds and some belief systems. We're going to need everybody to be part of this industry. What's that like?
Well, I think we've been really successful with it. So one of the key things for us is we don't attack coal, which, like I said earlier, it's what built this state, and it's what brought our families to West Virginia. It's so much to do with how we are, what we're like as a people. So the last thing you ever want to do is talk smack on coal. So that's important thing number one. Important thing number two is we actually unionized our workforce last year. So we joined up with the IBEW electrical union, and it's been really incredible what that's done just politically in the state, and pulling in different folks who would not have seen themselves in the solar industry. So now the long time union members, 15, 20 years of experience in the field, they all want to come work with us and work in this because we're meeting them where they're at. So that's been incredibly successful for us. And then, beyond that, I think we're just super supportive of West Virginia's community organizations. When I started up the company, we were completely focused on churches and homeless shelters and other community organizations around the state, and that commitment has continued. We just did a large food bank campaign focused on the southern coal fields and Huntington. And we're doing a lot of support for organizations that folks love and support and take care of their neighbors, and that really shines through versus the wildcats out there just trying to come in and take a buck.
I think one of the reasons why you've been successful is you're genuine, and people can sense, even if they might not believe in climate change, that I think that passion is contagious, and I think that you've met people where they're at, and I think having a lot of respect for the hard, incredibly hard, dangerous work of generations of folks that went underground to dig the black rock that built this country, probably differentiates you from the stereotypical view that a lot of folks have of solar as being a coastal elite, kind of world. Your actual folks that are up on the roof slinging glass, or behind a computer, making circuit calculations or putting graphics together for some educational piece. Do they have family that came up in the coal mines? Are they ever sharing stories about, family picnics and how they the reaction when they share that they're working in solar?
Last year we'll need to update this, but last year we did a survey of everyone on staff, and at that point, 52% of our company had direct family in fossil fuel industries, like right now. So whether it was coal or natural gas, we had more than half coming from that. I know, me personally, I had a great grandfather die in a mining accident. We've got other. Obviously, I never met him. He was way before my time, but that's in our family lineage. We've got other folks who's like, once you get down into southern West Virginia, like Mingo County, where we did a lot of our early job training focus, it's impossible. Like, coal drives that entire economy. So, if you're growing up there, your parents or your aunts and uncles, or like you definitely have family working for the mines, and all of a sudden now we've got they're coming home to the dinner table talking about the solar project they put up, and I'd say it's kind of similar to what drove the success of the marriage equality movement. What happened there is people saw their family members or coming out, or other folks they know coming out, and it made it less foreign, and just this is my family. I can't be against my family, and we're trying to apply the same approach to clean energy, where it's no longer foreign because your kid works in solar, or your brother works in solar, or your cousin works in wind. Like, that's what's going to drive that's already driven the change that we wanted to see in West Virginia. So when we started out, there was basically no one doing this stuff in West Virginia. Our first project was with a church, and 6 months after that project went live, utilities tried to push through a net metering change. That they tried to push through a bill that would have gotten rid of net metering, and we flooded every single legislator in the state with 600 emails in one night saying, "Don't take solar away from my church." It worked, and the very next day we got a unanimous vote to leave net metering in place, because people saw it wasn't just some coastal thing, and it wasn't even a country club thing. It was the neighborhood church. And then we saw other policy successes when we did work with Catholic Charities of West Virginia on their neighborhood center, where they make Meals on Wheels. And so, starting out with the nonprofits who are really supporting the community, that and in particular communities of faith, that's what changed the politics around solar in the state. And now we're adding in the job piece, the union piece, and it's really, truly becoming solar for all.
This is probably a good time to point out that Dan's got a master's degree in energy policy and climate from Johns Hopkins University and has a background before solar in political organizing. And I think it's showing through. It's solar. To be successful in solar sometimes takes a diversity of talents and not just engineering and quote unquote business mindset. So yeah, that thunderclap of 600 emails from church going folks that those politicians couldn't ignore. That's power right there. Tell me a little bit more about reaching across the aisle. I think that's something that our viewers and listeners are going to have to realize. We've made a lot of progress this far, but it's been kind of the low-hanging fruit, and it's been a limited success. And if we're going to address, the true potential of solar, we're going to need to not only reach customers and work with stakeholders and policy folks that might be on a different team than the jacket we're wearing. And then more importantly, tap into that talent pool, the installers, the techs, the members of our team. Any advice for folks out there that are, going to be crossing that diversity chasm?
I guess I would start out by saying it's definitely possible. In the legislature this year, we just got a legal power purchase agreements just got legalized in West Virginia. In a legislature that in the West Virginia House of Delegates, there's 78 Republicans and 22 Democrats, and we got a legalization bill through, and it really came down to the economic development arguments, and across we're just like any state, we're looking for the Amazons and the Googles, and actually a big part around solar liberalization of solar laws came down to Virgin Galactic and their Hyperloop testing facility that they're building in Vermont, West Virginia. Virgin went in and said, hey, we want to do this, but we only want to do it if we can get clean energy. And they were talking to state departments of commerce saying, well, what can you do to, what are your current clean energy policies? And they initially went to the administration in West Virginia and said, what are your policies? And they were like, we don't really have anything. And it was that big corporate demand for clean energy that ended up pushing through, or really changing a lot of minds within the administration, within the Justice Administration. So between that plus all the church work and across the aisle, it definitely wasn't coming from a climate focus. It was coming from just pure jobs, economic development for a place that needs it, and then with a sprinkle of free market mindset in there. So, how can you tell us we can't choose to buy power? How can you tell us that we're required to only buy from this monopoly?
Yeah, that blows my mind how you can have a political person on the one hand talk about almost a libertarian free market Ayn Rand, this and that, and at the same time taking money and doing the bidding of a monopoly, trying to protect their protected market. One state over from a place where they've gone through deregulation, and we have the competitive forces bringing to the marketplace more choices and cleaner choices and higher performing choices, innovation. I think it's changing slowly, but people like you and your compatriots are accelerating that shift. Nice work. So, speaking of politics, national politics has put West Virginia on the map, and Senator Joe Manchin seems to be in the pivotal catbird seat in a lot of ways. he's an interesting guy, and I'm not sure, how closely he's been working with you until solar is now a hot button issue, but he could potentially bring solar manufacturing into West Virginia in a big way. Do you all see that as a likely path forward?
I guess what I can say is I'm excited that he's putting out there the manufacturing bills for solar. Like, ultimately, we need a lot more solar panels in the world. We need them fast. And the closer you can locate the facilities to markets where they're going to be needed, that just means we can get this stuff out there quicker and quicker, and not have a sideways boat in the Suez Canal screwing up supply chains. So I think it's really important to bring that bring manufacturing of clean energy products into the places that have been building stuff for 100 years. I think there's just a lot of talent there. There's a lot of kind of idle resources that we can repurpose, and it just makes sense. So I'm glad to see him getting behind that. West Virginia right now is kind of having a moment, and that's kind of exciting. It's exciting for me to make clean energy work for West Virginia. It really needs to be. We really need to be pushing the manufacturing side. We need to be pushing, because ultimately solar jobs are construction jobs, and you need a critical mass to make it work. The other thing from my perspective that's so important for making solar work for the project side is the way we incentivize solar is kind of crazy. That we do it through tax credits, where you can only get those tax credits if you make enough income in the first place. And I was running the numbers on this in West Virginia. You have to be in the top 10 percentile. You have to be in the top 10% of household income in the state in order to fully qualify for the solar investment tax credit in the first year. So what we're asking, and it's because West Virginia is low income. We're 50th out of 51 on every income and household wealth list. So median income in the state is $46,000. In order to fully take advantage of the tax credits, you need something like $110,000 household income. And so the way we've structured this right now is just fundamentally, it's making it harder for folks in the center of the country that don't have coastal incomes to actually pull these projects off. So I'm really hoping that is.
I'd go further and say I'm going to go ahead and say it's classist. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I think it's an unintended policy outcome that tying this, the major, in most cases only federal incentive for going solar to a tax credit that you can only monetize if you've got enough taxable income is classist. And it's probably one of the many, many things that we do or have done in the past, maybe with good intentions. Maybe that was the best way to get something across the bipartisan divide. But yeah, we see it all the time. We've got folks coming to Third Sun Solar asking for solar, and we dig into it, and there may be a large number of retired folks that have a lower income and lower taxable income. Just say, oh, wow, we can't get that tax credit. And then tons of working folks, maybe school teachers and police officers, anybody in the service industry, they're working full time, and they might be doing relatively well and providing a good, stable income for their families. But because of the way the tax code is set up and the depreciation, all the exemptions that they've got, et cetera, they can't take this tax credit.
Another case we see a lot are folks with large families. Like if you've got 3, 4, 5 kids, you've got a large child tax credit, which means you basically don't pay any taxes, which is a good thing for them. But that means that there's nothing left over for a solar tax credit. And those are folks that use a ton of energy and spend a huge chunk of their monthly bill on electricity. And ideally, we'd be able to help them, but we can't because they don't pay any taxes. And then you get to the churches and the homeless shelters, and the entire tax equity market is driven by the Googles and Goldman Sachs of the world because they're the ones that pay taxes, and they're the ones that have the armies of accountants and lawyers to structure all the crazy deals behind the scenes. And so even if you do get some tax equity for some projects in West Virginia, it still means that so much of the profit is getting sucked out to New York instead of being reinvested in the towns here. So yes, it's classist. I desperately want to see a change with the infrastructure plan this year.
Yeah, we're pushing right now for, this is getting wonky. Everybody put on your wonky seatbelts, but 25D parity. And really there's a tax credit code that is one way for commercial entities and another way for individuals, which would be our residential clients. And it's possible and probably likely that the commercial tax credit can be taken as a cash grant, or I'm not sure what the jargon is that they're spending on it, but basically really changes it advantageously. But they're not talking about that, and there's not traction for that for residential yet. What a great opportunity to open up solar to LMI populations, low and medium income populations in the urban areas and California and New York, as well as in the rural areas across the Appalachian Midwest and everywhere else. We'll see. I guess we'll put in the show notes a place that we can advocate for this and call out for support for this, because I think it would do a lot to diversify the customer base for solar and clean energy. Dan, I'm going to throw the mic to you and let you take direction. Is there anything that you want to point out in terms of places our industry could be doing better, things that are we're failing on or way behind on in terms of race, class, justice, and equity, or perhaps maybe some success stories or things that we're doing well at or making improvement at?
So one thing that's really important for me is just making sure that the folks who are out there every day building the projects, the boots on the roof, the people designing the systems, that they all have a stake in this, and that they're getting good wages, that they're getting that we're not in a race to the bottom on like a lot of construction industries out there. So Solar Holler is one of the few companies nationwide that has actually unionized our workforce. We did this last year. Collectively, about 10.5% to 11%, according to the Solar Job Census, are unionized at this point. Of course, there are flavors to this, and our friends in the B-Corp and co-op world, that's kind of going down the same path of slightly different structure to it, where employees of the company also own portions of the company, and I fully support that. But I think as more and more big players or corporations get into the solar industry, I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that this is our chance to make sure that the folks who are actually out there every day building this stuff get some long-term benefit, and not just $12 an hour, no benefits, like can be laid off tomorrow. Like that's not what I want for this industry, and ultimately that's not what's going to win us public support. So our unionization effort has gotten a ton of support around the states. West Virginia was the site of mine wars back in the 1920s, with the folks fighting for the right to organize. And so this is just something that kind of goes through our DNA as a state as well. And it's done a lot of good for us. It's done a lot of good for us as a company. It's done a ton of good for for our employees, because now they have, they've got their pay scales. Like, you've got this much experience, you get paid this much. You've got 100% healthcare for the whole family. You've got pensions. Like, we're actually doing pensions, which are unheard of these days, as compared to 401ks. And we're just really, and they've got the social safety net of the union, so that there's always going to be electrical work out there, even if it's not solar. And if you have a slow month in the winter and need to go pick up a job wiring up an Arby's somewhere, you can do that too. And it's nice for just having that social safety net for all of the folks who are coming on board. Some other stuff that we've done is we've given stock options to our folks, so that they have an incentive to see the company grow. We do revenue shares for certain types of jobs. Really the whole mindset and MO here is we're building this together, and the benefits should go to everyone who's helping build it.
Well, there's a long history, not just in West Virginia, but everywhere, of exploitative industries and the working people, making things happen, often don't have a seat at the table, and if they do, it's at the kids' table with a small plate. So, did I hear you say that you all unionized as a company? Maybe, I don't know how to say this. It's when we hear about unionization, like the big fight with Amazon down in Arkansas, it's a workers' movement to gain rights and gain control, or at least power, and negotiate against a management or ownership enemy. But it sounds like you all might have done it differently.
Actually, our company's attorneys had never seen a case where the founder or the CEO of the company was the one doing the labor organizing. They just had never seen it before. So we made a conscious decision as management that this was the best way to go forward with the company, to join up with the union. We were already paying union scale wages, so it actually didn't increase our compensation at all, because we were already there. And so we went out. We had the organizing meetings. I talked at those about what this would mean in terms of benefits and how the structure would be. We were right there alongside the IBEW union organizers. Like, we were jointly in this. HR was in it. Our operations team, and we've done this for. We're not 100% across the whole company, but what we are is 100% across our installation teams. So the teams on the roof, the teams wiring up the inverters in the basement, all of those folks are union members. And so when folks come to us now and they're applying for jobs, part of that onboarding process is joining up with the union. And
there's apprenticeship training programs, and I mean, there's a huge number of benefits, I understand, to being a union shop. Yet most people that are owners of a small business, founders of a startup, they are conditioned, in day-to-day life, and from, I would say, a middle class or middle and upper class kind of background, that unions equal bad, and not so much that folks want to be exploitative and think that squeezing every half penny, is a smart business move. But I think some of the conditioning is around an us versus them mentality, when in small businesses and small organizations, to survive and thrive, you really have to have an all on board mentality. So sounds like that's not your experience, that you don't become an us versus them kind of an organization once you shift into a union space?
No, I'd say one of the things that's really done is helped provide a little more structure through the pay scales, through the through the benefit scales, and that's all thought out. One of the nice things from a business owner side is like it's no longer like, oh, Bobby over there makes more than me, and like I should be getting as much as I should be getting more than him. Like, that's we can't do that anymore because we have a collectively bargained pay scale, and so it just provides a lot more transparency for folks as well, so that they all know that they're getting their fair share based on their experience, and that once they do certain things, their pay will go up. Like as they put in more time, more hours in the field, their pay will go up. And it's not an us versus them thing. It's very much a like let's work together to create fair structures that are fair and transparent. And so I think that's been important for me. Also, in my case, my mom was a member of the Federal Employees Union for a couple decades. My dad actually built custom homes in West Virginia, and he was on the management side, or like kind of the field foreman. He was a field foreman for 40 years, and at one point he was a member of the Masons Union, doing bricklaying and concrete block laying for 10 years. So, maybe I was conditioned differently.
Yeah. I'd say that you're a pretty different kind of a guy in general. I think it takes a different type of person to build the company that you've built. But you haven't built it alone. Tell us a little bit about your team. I was checking out your website and I did not do an official count, but there are a lot of different kinds of chromosomes at Solar Holler. Is that intentional to have so many women, or is it just the way that folks interviewed and the organization ended up hiring and retaining so many women? Do you have an official count? It seems like more than half your at least your office team might be female.
Yeah, half of our leadership team is female. So really, really, really proud of that. That's been both intentional as well as the right people. So I don't think it's a choice there. It's like we knew we wanted to make sure that we had an equality of representation there, but also the people who are doing that work are awesome at what they do. So Leia and Jess and Neva and Laura and everybody on the team has just been awesome. We have a saying here: it takes all kinds, and we've even got these West Virginia stickers, all kinds welcome, on our office windows and everything. And I think what's so important with diversity and inclusion and the push for that is that, well, it turns out this stuff is really complicated when you're pulling these projects together, and it's not, you simply can't do this with one kind of personality or one set of skills. Obviously there's engineering work to be done and you need engineers, but you also need project managers. You need the boots on the roof. You need people who can actually translate all this technical jargon to homeowners. You need we're now about we've got, I think at last count, 51 or 52 employees across the company, and everyone is bringing their own talents. Everyone's bringing their own background and skill sets, and we need every single one of those people to handle the different parts of this project, as well as different customer types. And in order to do that, you better not try to do it with all men, because it just can't. Number one, that would be wrong, and number two, it just can't be done.
So it sounds like it's outcome based as much as anything else, but there is the moral and kind of thoughtful leadership intention there as well. That resonates. Yeah. Well, Dan, I congratulate you for your success so far. I know you've got big goals, and It's great to have the wind at our back, maybe policy-wise. And sounds like having the PPAs legalized in West Virginia should create larger projects and with bigger impact. So congratulations and best of luck.
I'm just as optimistic now as I was when I kind of like started out as a as a wide-eyed entrepreneur.
Yeah, this is now where we shift over to the Solar for All Better Together section. You've already shared a whole bunch of good stuff that's going to hopefully help and inspire our listeners to make the changes and grow and move solar forwards for the betterment of our industry and our planet. But it's not all business. For me, music keeps the solar coaster ride bumps tolerable. And I know that I've learned a lot through reading and through connecting with others and learning from their mistakes. So we're interested to hear from you on these subjects. The first part is the note and promote section, where you can maybe call out an author or a thought leader or a book that you want to amplify and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. So whenever I've had a hard week or something hasn't gone quite as planned, I like to go back to a guy named Ray Kurzweil. He's the chief futurist for Google. But back in 2016, he did an amazing essay and TED Talk called Here's Why Solar Will Dominate Energy Within 12 Years. And what's so powerful about this is he walks through exponential math, which is happening right in front of our eyes, but humans aren't really built to process it and understand it. And one of the biggest takeaways from this talk by him, by Kurzweil, was just that by the time you get to 1% of energy in the world coming from solar, you're actually halfway to 100. Because we're on the same track as cell phones were, or semiconductors. Like fundamentally, this is technology that's getting better and better and better and lowering in price. And yes, there's going to be hard weeks along the way, but ultimately, math is in our favor, and it's just a really, really uplifting, kind of powerful reminder of where we're going and how we're going to turn around in 10 years, and barely recognize it because everything's changing so quickly.
Wow, that's great. Change happens fast. We're going to put that in our show notes at solarforall.show. For folks, you can just come log on and click through and watch that TED Talk. It's going to be queued up at the top of my list. Dan, what's some advice that has helped you along the way? Any kind of wisdom?
I try to just remember that, like, back to the takes all kinds, and this industry, what we're doing here, it really does take all kinds. And I think that's something I personally set out with, and I'm really glad I did, because if we hadn't been approaching this from that direction of it takes all kinds of people in the organization itself, it takes all kinds of customers, ultimately what we're trying to do here is repower the world. And that means, 9-10 billion different kinds of people. And so we just can't lose sight of that fact and get, the political world has gotten more and more polarized, and we're off in our own little conversation bubbles. And I want to make sure that we're not polarizing, and that we're reaching out to different folks who have different motivations for why they want to go solar.
I just got chills. Repowering the world. Indeed. Thanks, Dan. The next part of this Better Together section is the Better Together 1+1 playlist, which you can find on Spotify, Pandora Music, Apple. And we are building a pretty diverse playlist, as diverse as the guests on our show. I'm going to ask you to give us 2 songs and artists, one of them an all-time favorite, a go-to, and another one perhaps something new or fresh that you've discovered that you want to pass along.
Yeah, so the all-time favorite is actually coming out of my campaign days, but it's kind of a pick-me-up as well. Goo Goo Dolls, listeners may likely remember them, but they had one song in particular called "Better Days," which was a staple on the Obama 08 campaign. But if you're ever listening to it and you're having a down day, Better Days is just like a good rock song about how everything will get better. This too shall pass. So I'm a big fan of that. And then the most listened to song for me over the last year, it's a couple of years old at this point, but it's by the band Vampire Weekend. And they put out this amazing song called Harmony Hall. It's got all different kinds of instruments. I can't do it justice, but it's just an amazing, infectious listen. So Harmony Hall by Vampire Weekend.
All right. Well, that sounds awesome. I'm going to have to cue that up as well. Dan, thank you so much for being a guest on Solar for All, and also for all the work you do and who you are as a person. I'm proud to call you my friend, and I'm really glad to have had you on as a guest on the pod. Thanks to our sponsors, Third Sun Solar, and to our listeners. Our listeners are our army of activists. And so that's how we're going to get this out there to effect the change and to inspire the change and to facilitate and help folks that are working for the change that we're all part of. The way you can do that is to subscribe, as well as share us and share it with a friend. You can find the show notes at solarforall.show.
Thanks so much for having me on, Geoff. It's been a pleasure, and it's always fun getting to talk with you.